Hello and welcome to all my Flosstube neighbors. I am Chris and this is XrossStitch. And today is Tuesday, September the 19th, 2023, and this is Flosstube number 61. I'm tickled because that's about the fifth time I had to record that because I just brushed my teeth and my mouth was Vesuvius. I don't know why I'm spitting so much this morning. So if you get hit by an errant loogie, just, wipe off the front of your TV screen or monitor. Anyway, enough of that silliness. Hi, how are you? I'm Chris, and I'm so glad to have you here with me today. I've got a big day. It's going to be a fun day. And if you are a new subscriber, and I know there are many of you, welcome. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with me today. There are so many wonderful Flosstubers out there, and the fact that you're sitting on my front porch in my neighborhood makes me very happy. So thank you for coming. I really do appreciate it. I hope that you like the video if you are brand new here, and I hope you like it enough to subscribe to the channel, click the little bell, do all the things that we do in the world of Flosstube. And if you're a returning subscriber, welcome back. It's good to see you again, my friends, my family, my neighborhood. And why neighborhood? Why neighborhood? I know that many of you are new and may not know why I refer to it as a neighborhood. Well, not too terribly long into XrossStitch when I started about 2 years ago. Really only, well, it's been more than a year. It's been more than 2 years. Whenever I started, it's early. Oh, mine's not working. But whenever I started, a few videos in, I think it was maybe my 6th or 7th, I just made an errant comment about wanting to be, well, I'll show you. Take a look. By and large, this sounds so strange, but by and large, it's this community. It's this neighborhood. I want to be the Mr. Rogers of Flosstube, because this is the neighborhood that I like to share my work in. And I think it's great. So yes, the people in my life enjoy my stitching. I received from my viewer, Linda M, an amazing thing. She sent me this. It's a little Mr. Rogers figurine with an accompanying book. And listen.
Have some favorite neighbors where you live? I mean, real neighbors with whom you can talk and play and ask for help if you need it. I hope so.
Now, I had no idea that that was the one that was going to play. And that's perfect. Because I have those neighbors that I can talk and laugh with and play with and ask for help if I need it. And that's you. And that's what we should all be for each other. Again, I can't hold a candle to this guy right here. But as an inspiration, as a person to strive towards being more like, I couldn't have a greater one than Mr. Rogers. So thank you. That was a clip from my holiday special of a couple of years ago, and the second little portion was a snippet about a wonderful, lovely gift that I had received, as you saw. That one comment, that's kind of the evolution of it. That one comment spurred all of you responding in such a kind manner and sending me lovely little things to kind of reinforce that whole Mr. Rogers or Flosstube thing, and it is a kind of a nickname or whatever it is. What's the word for it? Anyway, it's the vibe that you have here at XrossStitch, and I'm honored, very honored, and very pleased with it, and I hope that it continues. So that's why I call it a neighborhood. That's why I refer to you as my neighbors. If I ever say thanks for visiting the neighborhood or welcome neighbor instead of welcome viewer, that is why I say that. And another catchphrase that some of you may not know about is the hashtag Chris It Up. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but Chris It Up was started by my dear friend and fellow Flosstuber Darcy Cameron, and that also took off. And I'm happy that it took off, because Chrising it up is not about, wearing rose-colored glasses and, going through life just being positive for positive's sake. It's about finding a joyful moment in an otherwise horrible day, or allowing yourself to still enjoy things that you enjoyed maybe as a child or a young adult or whatever. We get older and we think that we can't nurture that inner child. We can't nurture the part of us that loved Snoopy, or the part of us that loved Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, or any of that. And that's a real joy killer. So Chrising It Up is about finding that moment of joy among maybe not so joyful moments. And one of my dear viewers, Trudy M, actually did a chart that says Chris It Up, and here it is. And actually, this is a kind of a modified version of it. Someone stitched this. I can't remember who stitched this. I don't think this was the one Trudy stitched, because in Trudy's chart, it has a little, next to Chris It Up, it says, it has Sal, my little mascot, my buddy. He hasn't made an appearance yet, but he will. My nose is itching so bad. I'm so sorry about that, you guys. But anyway, felt like there was a bug on it. There's not a bug on it, is there? No, okay. Anyway, Trudy did that lovely chart. And that chart, if you want it, you email me and I'll send it to you. I would love to see more people stitch it. And I know a lot of you have. So those are just two recurring things about Criss-Cross Stitch as a channel that I felt important to let you all know about, because so many of you are new here and continue to come join the neighborhood. But enough of the intro. We've got a lot of cross-stitching to talk about today, and some surprises that you aren't ready for. So let's go ahead and move on to that. So several weeks ago, I talked about how it is absolutely feasible for you to refinish something. We talk about finishes and we talk about fully finishes. So those are finishes, and then we have FFOs, fully finished objects, for those of you who may not know what those are. But I think that we can have RFOs, refinished objects. And I showed you a refinished object a few weeks ago. I showed you my Snoopy Chef that I had reframed. Well, just like Snoopy Chef, which used to hang in my kitchen in my other house, this piece used to hang in my kitchen in my other house, and it was framed in red as well. This is my lovely little Golden Girls chart project. This was done, I found this pattern online. She has a whole series of them, this cloudsfactory.net, and it's all these classic icons from film and television, books, what have you. And she does them in these cute little kind of not block characters, but rather simplistic iterations of them. And I just thought this was adorable. And I stitched this up prior to having my channel. This is one of the things I showed on my very first episode. And I refinished it because it goes, the grand theme of my new house is blue, and I refinished it in blue, and there it is. And I love it. I think it looks just as good in the blue as it does the red. But that is a refinish I wanted to show you. Don't be afraid if something is not going with your decor, or you remodel the house, or you want to change something, refinish it. Refinish it. And if it's been framed expensively, that's one thing. But if it's something that you've redone on your own, redo it and make it new. Give it a new life. So there's a quick refinish for you. The next finish I had this week was another one of my Mill Hill kits, and you saw the beginnings of this. I think I had started it last week. I'm not 100% sure, but I finished my Whale Santa by Mill Hill, and it's right here. I haven't cut it out yet, and there's a reason I haven't cut it out yet, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. But so this is a finish. As you know, I'm on an ornament kick, a Christmas ornament kick, and I'm also there's a twofold method behind this madness. One is that I eventually want a tree that is completely Christmas. I want a Christmas tree that's completely Christmas ornaments. Yeah, that's where my mind is this morning. Makes so much sense, doesn't it? If it wasn't wrong. What I was trying to say is what I want to do is have a Christmas tree full of cross-stitch ornaments. I showed one last year on my channel. I'll dig that up and pull it back out because it's worth showing again. One of my wonderful neighbors sent me her tree, and it's like a whole tree of huge of cross-stitch ornaments. She's been working on it for like 15 years. Anyway, I digress. So one of the purposes of doing these ornaments is to work towards that goal. The second is to give myself small finishes to keep myself going. I got into a rut towards the end of my first season because I had just, dived into these enormous projects that I thought, oh yeah, I'll finish that in 3 months. No, you won't. You will not finish a Mirabilia in 3 months. You just won't. Well, some of you might, if you stitch on it monogamously. Anyway, giving yourself these small little triumphs is wonderful. So that's why I've started doing these ornaments. This you're looking at it now, obviously. I did have some challenges with this particular one. As compared to the first one, the Scottish Santa that I did. The colors were a little bit more difficult to discern on this one. Especially in his cloak, I think, as a matter of fact, that I was missing a color. Either I was missing a color or there were two that were so close that I could not tell them apart in any light that I shined on it whatsoever. I think it's possible that a color was just left out. In the cape, in all of these kind of rose mauve tones in the cape, it ended up being fine because I went and I pulled the color that I couldn't find. I actually had the color of DMC, and they provide you with the numbers that I couldn't find. So it all ended up working out. I also just made just a mistake. It was my error. I inverted the color in his little leather trousers. The darker is supposed to be the contrast, and the lighter is the bulk of the body of the trousers. I reversed them, and it doesn't matter one bit. But he's very cute. There were lots more beading in this one, but it makes it very sparkly. And again, the beard was a little bit fiddly. As someone on Instagram said, that beard looks like it would be fiddly. It's very fiddly, very fiddly. You almost have to know how to play the violin to do it. I see what I did there. But one of my Instagram viewers, and the reason I didn't cut this out is because she said to me, her name's Corrine on Instagram, and she said, I've never stitched on perforated paper. What's it like? Is it hard to do? How do you hold it? Yada, yada, yada. So I thought I wouldn't cut this out, and I would just talk about perforated paper for a second, because I have come to love it. I've grown to love it. It is not difficult to stitch on whatsoever. And most of these ornaments that you get in these kits, it's a 14 count perforated paper. So it's, you stitch this with 3 strands of DMC, which I don't like doing, but on these, it gives you great coverage. It's very easy to stitch on. You think paper, you think flimsy. It's not. This is almost the, has the body of plastic canvas. It's very easy to hold. You don't use a hoop at all. Or I mean, why would you use a hoop? You can just hold on to it. Now you have to be careful that you don't bend it or grip it too tightly. I find, and I also like to change my hand position on it because our hands naturally have oils and they naturally sweat. And you think, well, my fingers aren't that sweaty. You'd be surprised when you're holding on to a piece of paper. Over time, you'll see that it'll start getting a little bit more pliable. You just move your hand around on it and you reposition your hand as you're stitching it. But it's tougher than you think. It's easy to stitch on, and it makes for really wonderful projects. In fact, one of the next things I'm going to show you, I stitched on plastic canvas, on perforated paper that I ordered because I had an idea. But let's finish this one. This is my Welsh Santa. I've just pontificated way too much about that, but I wanted to answer those questions that Corrine had about stitching on perforated paper. If you haven't and you've wanted to, try it. I think you'll enjoy it. Now listen, it's not for a Mirabilia or a sampler, but for ornaments and for specialty projects, I think it's great. So there's the Welsh Santa. My next finish is something that you might not remember, and if you don't remember from the first season, I don't blame you because it was only there for a blip. But I started a project last year as a tribute to Mr. Stephen Sondheim when he passed away. As you may know or may not know if you're new here, I had a previous career in musical theater. I was a professional musical theater singer, actor, dancer for many years and toured and did shows and all over the place. For most of my young adult life, that was my profession. And obviously I loved Stephen Sondheim, performed in several of his shows over the years and across the country. So as a tribute to him, I found a pattern on Etsy. This is from a company called The Stitch Patterns, and I'm sure that you're familiar with them if you look for patterns on Etsy. They do all of the little mini masterpieces, which are the miniature charts of famous paintings. And I found this one. A Sunday on Le Grand Jatte, 1884. This is a little snippet of the painting, A Sunday on Le Grand Jatte, 1884, and that's the technical name of the piece by Georges Seurat. It is not a Sunday in the Park with George or a Sunday afternoon on the island of Le Grand Jatte, as I erroneously thought at one time. No, it's a Sunday on Le Grand Jatte. I looked at my notes. A Sunday on Le Grand Jatte, 1884. And this is, as I said, a small piece of it. I started this on regular Aida cloth. And yes, I say Aida, not Ada. Aida, but this is a snippet of that, and I started on Aida cloth, and I didn't get far with it. But as I was stitching on the ornaments, I decided this would be great to do this little small piece on, and this is how I'm going to finish it, you guys. Look at this. So the only thing that bothered me about this wonderful little chart is that I really want to kind of represent the whole painting. So I had the idea, I scaled this and everything in Photoshop so that it's the exact right size. What you're seeing is the template of what I'm going to do. And I'm going to put that is how I'm going to frame it. I'm going to frame it myself because I don't think, one, this is a small little art project piece, and two, I want to make sure it's done the way I want it to be. This is only going to be about a 5x7, but I think it's going to be adorable. I'm going to superimpose this on top of the printed photograph of the painting. This little pattern right here, believe it or not, it was so much fun to stitch. It has 1,036 stitches in it. Isn't that something? And there are a lot of color changes in this little 2.5 by 2 inch chart. But I cannot tell you how much fun I had stitching it. I can't tell you how many more there are of these little mini masterpieces on the stitch patterns on Etsy. So if this is something that you think you might enjoy doing, go check them out on Etsy, because I'm going to be getting more of these and doing them. I think they're just adorable. It's a wonderful way to bring some classical art into your home and combine it with your love of stitching. And it's fantastic to do it on 14 count perforated paper with 3-ply of DMC. I just had so much fun doing this. But that was a start and a finish in 2 days. I did that in 2 days. And I just love it. I'm dropping it. A Sunday on Le Grand Jatte, 1884, Georges Seurat, by the Stitch Patterns on Etsy. I finished, I'll show it to you when I get it fully finished in that really kind of cool way I'm going to frame it. So on to works in progress. In addition to the Wales Santa and the Sunday Le Grand Jatte piece that those were 2 finishes. I stitched on both of those this week. I pulled another older work in progress out of the vaults, as it were, and worked on it because I was nominated for a challenge, a 600 stitch challenge by my friend Michaela. She has been a longtime neighbor in the neighborhood, all the way from Germany. And she actually has her own Flosstube channel called Nadelsucht, which I think means addicted to stitching. Nadelsucht. Of course, I'll link it in the comments below. She challenged me. I was nominated, rather, for a 600 stitch challenge to put 600 stitches in a project that was autumnal, or specifically contained orange, the color orange. And this is just a fun kind of thing that another, I believe, if I'm not misspeaking, another German Flosstuber began, and they're trying to promote kind of international linking up the stitching community internationally, so that you will expand your horizons and maybe branch out and watch a Flosstube channel that's in another language, because we now have subtitles that will auto-translate. And indeed, when I watch Michaela's channel, that's how I have to watch it. I have to watch it with the subtitles on. Now, if you're stitching and you have your head down, but whenever we watch Flosstube, we look up and down, and you'd be surprised how much you can actually keep up with both your stitching and your subtitle reading. Your mind is a fascinating thing. But that is what the challenge was, and here's the piece that I worked on. We'll talk more about the challenge in a second, but here's the piece. The Mini Train of Dreams. This was a stitch along that Michaela turned me on to during the first season. This is art by the wonderful Randall Spangler, this beautiful, whimsical, fantastical, colorful piece. This is the first Haid I worked on, not my first full coverage, but my first Haid, Heaven and Earth design. And this piece was in bad shape because I had gotten bored with it, and I had skipped around because I wanted to finish color. I was stitching, and there would be a whole clump of color over there that I was using the thread that I was working on, so I jump over. Anyway, I left my organizational capabilities at the door and didn't stitch this piece the way I meant to stitch it. So when Michaela challenged me, I decided, well, I'm going to get the piece that she turned me on to, and I'm going to do 600 stitches in it. And I actually did a page finish on it and even moved onward. This is now you can actually see the whole design. This is very tiny stitches, one strand of DMC, but it's turning out beautifully, and I've started the diagonal stitching and parking with it. I just love stitching on it, and once I picked it up and started stitching it, I'm addicted. I'm going to stitch on this for a few more days before I move on to something else in the next time we see each other, because I'm getting the biggest kick out of it. So that's what I put my 600 stitches in on, and got a page finish on this work in progress, and even a little further with it. And I just love it. It makes me want to stitch more Heaven and Earth designs. I have a big Shakespearean one that I'm going to pull out and start soon. That'll be a big to do when I do it. I might start that with the new year. We'll see. But that is the Mini Train of Dreams by Heaven and Earth Designs. So now I'm supposed to nominate 3 people, but here's the deal. I have to figure out exactly how the rules work because I am not 100% sure exactly how the rules work. So I need to have a confab with my dear friend Michaela and make sure that I understand it before I nominate someone. So I am going to retake the challenge and stitch 600 more stitches on a piece containing orange. We're not going to count those 600 I stitched on that. We're going to say that that was practice. So I am still in the throes of the challenge. And in 2 weeks' time, I will do the full nomination, and I will make sure that I have everything straight. But I encourage you, if you want to just go ahead and broaden your horizons, check out the Flosstube channel, Nadelsucht, my friend Michaela. She does beautiful stitching. You will have to use subtitles, your auto English subtitles, but she does beautiful stitching. She's a dear friend and a fellow neighbor, so please check her out. And I will be back in 2 weeks' time with my 3 nominees. So my fellow Flosstube friends, you know who you are, especially if you're across the pond. You might be nominated. So look at what you have that has orange in it for the autumn challenge. It's time for Storytime with Chris, and I left you all with a cliffhanger a couple of weeks ago, and it resulted in some funny interactions over the course of the 2 weeks, especially with some of my fellow Alabamian Flosstubers. More on that later, but let me say a couple of things just about this in general before I launch forward with the story. The continuing story of my relationship with my mother. I didn't speak much about her in the first season, and as you all intimated, it is not the easiest story or the most pleasant one, but I have to assure you that it's important to me and that I tell it because, I think her story needs to be told too, and this part of my story needs to be told too. It's not, listen, I cry at the drop of a hat. You saw that from just the Mr. Rogers clip that I played earlier. But, and I very well may cry again, but I'm okay with this chapter in my life. And because I'm telling it means that, I'm even more at peace with it because I think it's important to talk about these things as we come to terms with them. And this is something I've had to come to terms with my entire life. And it is a process I will be going through my entire life, to reconcile all these feelings. But I'm fine. I want to tell the story. So please don't, you all are so kind with your concern and your care for me, but I just want you to know that I really want to tell it, and I want you to know it, and because it's a wild story. So where we left off, mother, the darling of our small town in Alabama. Mother became with child, and that child happened to be me. But before we get to the birth, let's go back to the fallout. I do not know how word got out in town, but, you know, in a town like my hometown, where there was only 3 traffic lights and one of them blinked, you couldn't, you could hardly turn around in your outhouse without someone knowing about it. And, you know, before long, it was like a bonfire that ran through. Mother received a lot of flack for it, as you might imagine. And it was very, very difficult for her. My grandfather at the time, my grandfather was her father was a contractor and owned a building supply company in our town. He had built most of the houses, many of the houses, not most, but many, many of the houses in our town. And he had, because they worked with asbestos in that period of time, he had contracted mesothelioma. So he was struggling with lung cancer when all this was happening, and going back and forth to treatments in Birmingham, Alabama, I believe, or Jasper, outside of Sulligent. And my dear Mary Will, who I talked about in the previous season, Mary Will was a close friend of the family, and much more worldly, having been all over the world, taught in England. You know, I've told you the story about Mary Will, and kind and compassionate and graceful and just an angel. She went to my mother and she said, Judy, I think you need to go away. You need to leave to have your baby. She said, because people here, they're going to drive you crazy. And I believe she said, they're going to kill you. It's going to kill you, not literally, but it's going to affect you, your health and your well-being. So my 2 great aunts, Clara and Johnny May, staged a covert operation. My grandmother would not hear of Mother leaving. And knowing my grandmother, I can completely understand why, because she was a wonderful woman, but she was overprotective. And so Clara and Johnny May, knowing that it was what was best for Mother and what Mother wanted to do, staged a covert operation. My granddaddy had to go to a treatment out of town, and my grandmother had gone with him. I think it was in Birmingham or Jasper, but they had to stay overnight. So Clara and Johnny May, after they had left one evening, went to the house, picked up my mother, drove her to the Greyhound bus station. I think that was like 15 or 20 miles away, and put my mother on a bus to go to Birmingham, to catch a plane, to fly to La Jolla, California, San Diego, California, where her eldest brother was stationed. He was lieutenant commander in the Air Force or Navy, Air Force. I'll figure that out. He was lieutenant commander and had a big family out there, and had agreed to take her in during the course of her pregnancy. So that's what happened in the dark of night. And I can just, in my mind, seeing this, I see this happen. I'm probably dramatizing it in my head far more spectacularly than it was, but I can see it, Clara, Johnny May getting Mother all ready, and Clara coming up in the car, and, keeping this from my grandmother would have been a big deal in our family, because my grandmother was kind of like the, I wouldn't say the matriarch, but those were her younger sisters, and they did what she said. But they did it, and Lord knows what it was like for them afterwards. But for Johnny May and Clara, but they snuck my mother to the bus station. Mother took the bus to Birmingham. She flew to California, And that is where she went through the next 9 months of her pregnancy. There was a hurdle, though. That was in probably January of 1971. In March of 1971, my grandfather died. He was coming back from a checkup with his doctor. I know this was in Jasper, Alabama. He was coming back from a checkup from his doctor in Jasper, Alabama. My Uncle Jimmy was driving, my Aunt Lou was in the front seat, and my granddaddy and grandmother were in the back seat, and granddaddy had a heart attack and died in the back of the car. Jimmy turned the car around, and he was speeding back to Jasper, and was pulled over by a highway patrolman who, when he immediately saw what was happening, turned his lights on, and they went right back. He escorted them all the way back to the hospital, but granddaddy was dead, and it was a heart attack brought about from the complications of the treatment and his lung cancer. So Mother flew back home with my Uncle Clyde Jr., her brother, for that funeral. A few months after she had been out there already. And that was incredibly difficult too for the family. Obviously, because Mother had gone away, and, it was a roller coaster of a ride for our family during that period of time. I wasn't around for it. I have not entered the story yet. But this is March of the year I was born. So I never knew my grandfather. And that was very hard for Mother, because some of the other members of my family were very unkind to her when she came back to that funeral. And people can be very unkind and say things that they don't mean in the heat of the moment. And there were many things said to my mother at that funeral. And she immediately left and went back with my Uncle Clyde Jr. to California to go through the rest of her pregnancy. And then in August, I came around. And that's where we're going to pause for today, because this is not the end of the story. This is not the end of the story. There's so much more to go about my mother. And that's why this is a mini series. This is not a 2-part installment. So more story time to come in a few weeks about the continuing saga of my mother and our life together. All right. Moving on to giveaways this week, we are having a big 6,000 subscriber giveaway celebration, and all of these giveaways today are provided by my dear friend and fellow Flosstuber, Judy Whitman of JBW Designs. Judy is just one of the kindest ladies. I adore Judy. I've never met her, but I hope to meet her soon. By the way, I enrolled for, I put my name on the list for StitchCon. I'm actually going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to StitchCon. Anyway, hopefully go to StitchCon. But JBW Designs is providing these wonderful giveaways this week. And here they are. The first, and I have several. The first is her beautiful chart, very popular chart, relatively new chart, Bluebirds of Happiness. Bluebirds of Happiness. I know that many of you are going to want this one. It's gorgeous. If you would like to be considered for this, please comment on the video, and in your comment put the word Bluebird. Bluebird. Next up, we have another Bluebird sampler. It's a smaller Bluebird sampler. This is Hannah's Bluebird sampler. A cute little chart. This is on a small card. This wouldn't take you very long. The keyword for this will be Hannah, H-A-N-N-A-H, Hannah. Judy does beautiful Christmas ornaments and stockings. That's one of her main things, I think, and I've stitched several of them. I did her English plum pudding last year on linen, and tiny over one. It was a hoot to do, but it sure did turn out beautifully. A hoot. I say it was a hoot to do. It was difficult. I tried it, but it turned out beautifully. I love it. It's adorable. So there are 4 stocking patterns. I bundled them into 2 sets of 2. So the first is here. This is the Stitchers stocking and the Bristol stocking. So if you want these 2, please use the keyword Bristol, Bristol. And the next bundle, again, 2 more stockings. This is the Sampler stocking and the Danish stocking. And the keyword for this is Danish. Danish. Why did you lie? To get the Danish. Extra points if you can tell me which sitcom that is from. Here's a hint. I talked about it earlier. So Judy, thank you so much for your generosity. Thank you for being a friend. Wow, I did another Golden Girls reference. That's amazing. Thank you for being a friend and for all of your support. I just adore you, and I cannot wait, hopefully, to meet you one day, hopefully at StitchCon. And if you want to be considered for any of those, please be 18 years of age or older, be a subscriber to the channel. Please do like this video, and don't use any words such as giveaways or prizes or anything in your comment. You all know to do that, or rather to not do that by now. And we will announce those winners at the beginning of the next video in 2 weeks. Just a brief addendum from last week, the last giveaways. I've sent those all out. I know some of you have already received them, but I still need an address for Judy Greenhow. Judy Greenhow, you won something from 2 weeks ago, or rather a month ago. The last giveaway I did, you won something, and I don't have your address yet. So more winners in 2 weeks' time. It's time to wave at the neighbors, and this week we're waving all the way back to my old stomping grounds in North Alabama, to the North Alabama Stitchers Facebook group. Hey y'all, how you doing? And specifically the Floss Bosson cousins, Christy and Callie. They are a Flosstube channel here on Flosstube, obviously, and they're delightful, just delightful. I put Christy in a snit for my cliffhanger last week or 2 weeks ago, but she's fine with it. We discussed it. I talked her off the ledge, as it were, and everything is good. But I wanted to shout them out. If you've not seen the Floss Bosson cousins, please go give them a look, because they are hysterical. It's like I'm sitting back at home at the table with some of my friends, and they're just wonderful. So do check them out, and they do beautiful stitching, by the way. That's just as a plus. Go for the talking, but you'll get stitching as a bonus. And the other neighbor I want to wave at is a new neighbor. Well, maybe not new, but she's a new Flosstuber, and her name is Melanie at the Flosstube channel Uplift Stitches. Melanie has just started her Flosstube channel. She is a beautiful stitcher, and I encourage, and very kind, and I really enjoyed watching her video. I was brought to her attention by her husband Michael, who is another stitcher. They stitch together actually on the sofa at night, and I think that's wonderful. And he brought Melanie's channel to my attention, and I'm so very glad he did. So please go check out Uplift Stitches, and let Melanie know that I sent you there, and I would really appreciate it, and I think you'll enjoy it. She's just lovely. So those are the neighbors I'm waving at this week. That's today's video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. I appreciate the visit so much. And I hope that you have a great couple of weeks ahead as we move into autumn. It's really starting to feel and look like autumn a little bit where I am now. The tips of the leaves are just starting to turn and the chill is in the air, and I love it so much. It's just wonderful. So as you move further into autumn, I hope you have a good couple of weeks. Do a lot of great stitching. Remember to Chris it up if you're feeling down. And until next time, take care and bye-bye.